So we're going to start with a presentation from Michael Haxby from the New Kings Dems, who's going to give us the big picture, the overview of the state committee. What is it? What is its power? Why do we want to be on it? If we do want to be on it, how do we get on it? And if we get on it, how can we come together and make change through it? Then we're going to have 5 current state committee people who from various parts of the state. Jesse Pierce from Brooklyn in my assembly district, 52nd. Dan Cohen from Manhattan. VG Ramos Rios, I don't know if she's on yet, from Queens. Emily Adams from Tompkins County, and Jay Blanca from way up in Washington County, where it's already snowed. And then we'll have ample time for audience questions and discussion. And then, as usual, Arthur Schwartz will be on an hour late, but he has a good reason, because he's hosting his radio show from 7 to 8 on BAI. But he's our attorney, and he's done a lot of litigation around the state committee and petitioning, and he'll answer any legal questions that people might have about the state committee. And then we'll talk about next steps. Is that right, Maria? Does that sound good?
It sounds great. And we should all be excited. We're going to learn so much, and there's so much to do ahead of this. So let's start.
Sure. So one of our partners here is New Kings Dems, which has been fighting for democracy in the Democratic Party for years and years. Recruited me to be on the county committee through its Rep Your Block, which is a great program. We had 500 people at one meeting, I remember, the first meeting, and we were outvoted by Frank Cedillo, who had 600 votes himself. So Michael, you want to take it away?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Great to see everyone here to talk about party politics, my favorite thing. Yeah, so I am a member of the New Kings Democrats. I'm the data director for the club, and we have been focused in particular on changing the county party in Brooklyn. And but the thing that I want to emphasize here is that the county party, like the state committee, is what the Democratic Party is. If you want to talk about like what is the Democratic Party, it's actually composed of these very committees. And so I'm going to start sharing my screen and begin with go through some slides. If there is something that's really pressing that you need to ask, please put it in the chat, and like someone can stop me. Otherwise, I should have time for questions toward the end. All right. So, as I said, what is the state committee? State committee is the Democratic Party, the body that meets every 4 years to nominate its presidential candidate. The Democratic National Committee, that body is composed of committees from the states and territories. The state committee likewise sit atop county committees of the party. So between these two sets of bodies, the state committee and the county committees, the Democratic Party of New York is supposed to be able, using those state and county level offices, to connect the on-the-ground needs of New Yorkers to the legislative apparatus of the state and the federal level, where it can meet those needs. Of course, this is not how it happens in practice. So why not? And because it is a bottom-up Democratic Party in which members of the state committee and their affiliates in the county committees organize the state and build a responsive state party apparatus, that would not be under the control of a few leaders of the state party and their allies. The leadership of the Democratic State Committee jealously guards their power. So what are these powers? And I'll talk a little bit about the makeup of the state committee and who it is in a minute. So what are these powers? The central power of the state committee is electoral and financial. in its combined powers to endorse and raise and disperse money. The support of the party in a statewide race comes with a crucial advantage. The party's designation, is what it's called, obviates the need to petition statewide. This saves time and money for endorsed campaigns. Beyond that, election law gives what are called party committees wide discretion to raise money and then provide it to candidates in large sums. The party's then unofficial endorsement also gives candidates in primaries a major advantage over their opponents who would not have access to this party committee money. So the party has a heavy thumb on the scale in terms of who gets nominated to be a Democratic candidate in general elections. It uses then the recognition of this insider power to raise more money. Large corporate interests who want a say in what the Democratic Party does can give to the party committee, knowing the power they have over primary elections. It is an unvirtuous circle. What else could they be doing? We just saw a wipeout of Democrats in purple districts in the local elections in 2021. None of that party showed up to protect vulnerable Democrats. Elected officials in South Brooklyn, in my county, wrote publicly about how they never saw the state committee bring in resources or capacity to help them out. The voting right ballot questions also failed, in many cases because Democrats didn't know to vote for them. And the state party did nothing there either. The money gets spent instead on a few favored insiders, and in particular, it gets spent in party primaries rather than actually getting Democrats elected against Republicans or moving forward our backward election laws. So we're talking about a few other specific things, though. One here, as we're talking about these election laws, is the Board of Elections. One of the 4 executives of the State Board of Elections is chosen from a list provided by the state party. The state party provides a list to the governor who selects one of them, and that is one of the 4 executives of the State Board of Elections. New York law requires, it's in the Constitution requires that boards of election be bipartisan, not nonpartisan. And so the parties provide leadership and oversight. And likewise, county boards of election are overseen by the county committees. We have seen the effects of New York's crony-clogged boards of election in election administration in the last several years, from unexplained purges of voter rolls, massive rates of absentee ballot rejection, and the failure, again, in that most recent general election to provide timely information about crucial ballot questions. The county and state parties do not make use of their oversight powers to improve election administration, but in the main to dole out patronage jobs. Judicial elections are heavily under the control of county parties rather than state parties, but state committee members are often, in many cases directly and in other cases indirectly, major players in their county party. And again, rather than using the party's power to change who is elected and to provide transparency into these judicial elections, they are kept hidden and secret. If you've ever gone to vote, you don't know who those judges are on your ballot. And that is by design. That is how the county party works. And that is a way that they again disperse patronage jobs. So the state party guards these few powers while preventing regular Democrats access to the party. An accessible party could do so much more than just disperse money. Through the county committees, the party could organize and develop skilled local affiliates that could help when a tight election came around. Democrats could actually be organized neighborhood to neighborhood. On the ground knowledge could then inform a reimagined party platform. The party's resolutions, which it can pass on various policy issues, are not binding on the legislature, but just like the party platform at the DNC, they are crucial public statements of the priorities of Democrats, which could drive legislation. The party has the structures to develop a vision up from the grassroots of what Democrats should accomplish in power. It just chooses not to use these powers because it fears what would happen if people actually participated from the party, from the grassroots. Now, one of the reasons they're afraid is because the party also keeps an ethics code, which could, in theory, govern Democrats in New York and help fight corruption within the party. This ethics code is, of course, moribund, but new leadership at the party and at the state committee level could revive it. All right. So this is my case in very short terms for what the party does and how could it change. I wanted to open up here for questions before I go into some of the technicalities of exactly what a state committee position is and how they could be changed. Questions to begin with?
Yeah, after the ethics, what were the 2 items on the last slide, please?
After ethics, just a second. Where's my? A party platform can be established via resolutions, and they can organize the party from the grassroots. These last 2 are very much powers that are mostly not used. There is a party platform-ish, but it is, approved by the same insiders rather than being sort of developed up from the grassroots.
Okay, so there's 4 people with raised hands. I'm going to go in order from when I saw them. Kim Cooley, you're up first.
Hi, my question, thank you so much for trying to dive into what state committees do theoretically and in practice and what they could do. And I understand that some of that touches on what county committees do, don't do, should do. I wish if there is a future version of this, because I've been talking about running for state committee for years, and I can't even articulate why I would want to do that at this juncture. I mean, I could articulate it. I wouldn't articulate it well, let alone be able to like sell myself to voters and sell myself to other people I think maybe also should run for state committee. So if the distinctions could be more clear between what county committee does, doesn't do, what state committee does, doesn't do, and almost if we can have some sort of wrap, like as if we were canvassing voters, like that would be fantastic. I know why I would want to be, but I don't, I'm not familiar with the bylaws of the committee, and I don't know how to marry the 2.
So Michael, why don't you continue with your presentation, because some of these questions may get answered. The technical requirements may get answered in your presentation. If not, then we'll take the questions after you're finished. How's that?
Sounds good. All right, I'm going to move in now to talking a little bit about how you run for state committee. We have a bunch of state committee members on this call who have actually done it. So I'm just going to give a quick introduction and allow them to obviously take it away with a great deal more expertise. All right, so can you run for state committee? Yes. One of the cool things about the New York Democratic State Committee is that it is elected in primary elections. This is not true of every, this is not true in every state. There are various different structures the Democratic parties take in different states. I believe that New Jersey has a very similar structure to New York, but it varies quite a bit. But in New York, all of these seats are up for election every 2 years in the same cycle as, the governor, the attorney general, and of course the state legislative and federal seats, which are all up every 2 years. So you might be saying at this point, really? I've never seen state committee on my ballot. Now, this is another odd thing about New York election law that helps protect the party leadership. If a candidate in a primary does not have a challenger, then they do not show up on the primary ballot. And because party positions are elected in the primary, you're running to represent Democrats, not to represent everyone else in the district. If a state committee candidate is not challenged in a primary, they are elected to represent you without ever showing up on your ballot at all. So this is what we have to change. By running for positions on the state committee or for more local positions on the county committee, and these, again, sometimes overlap. Again, this is complicated. It varies county to county exactly how much they overlap. Democrats can take back their party and make it work for New Yorkers rather than for just a handful of insiders and their donors. What it takes is running and winning elections. So there are hundreds of state committee members in New York. There are 2 or more for each of the state's 150 assembly districts. If an assembly district is contained entirely in one county, it has 2 state committee members. If it spans more than one county, it has 2 state committee members for each county that it spans. These committee members always add up to having 2 votes, so sometimes they have a fraction of a vote. And again, this varies county to county. This is sort of a continuing theme. So by state law right now, these seats are distributed as 1 male and 1 female seat per county, per assembly district. This is, I think, obviously discriminatory against non-binary and gender non-conforming people who are unable to freely run for a seat which reflects their identity. There is legislation moving through the legislature right now to change this law, driven in part by the activism of state committee member Amelia Decadan from Queens. We don't know when or if this law will be changed, but I just want to note that this reform is ongoing. And so for now, what I expect, I don't know, is that people will still be required to run for a male or female seat. So if you want to run for state committee, that means running for a seat representing an entire assembly district or part of an assembly district. Assembly districts have about 100,000 people in them, give or take. It varies, obviously. So these are large seats. These are significant elections. And because there are 2, it is highly favorable to run with someone else running for the corresponding seat. You can work together, share costs and resources. So how do you do it? Well, you need to be a registered Democrat in the district. That is the requirement. And then now this with redistricting, it's a little bit complicated. I don't want to get into all of the specifics, but technically you could run for any seat in your county, but you would then need to reside in the district by the time that you're seated. So unless you have like the ability to move very quickly, you really should live in the district. Now, then what do? You're eligible, you want to run. You need to open a bank account and file a committee with the State Board of Elections in order to raise money for your campaign. Again, these are pretty significant seats. There is we're talking at least thousands of dollars in terms of money that you raise. Then you need to petition onto the ballot, collecting generally, at least in Kings County, what we've always recommended to people is 1,000 signatures from registered Democrats in the district. And then you need to file these petitions legally with your local Board of Elections. Having succeeded at that, to go out there, win votes, win a primary. So again, the state committee members can speak more knowledgeably than I can about how to run and win and about what holding a seat means. But I do want to emphasize the timeline here. Petitioning is scheduled between the end of February 2022 to the end of March 2022. Petitioning and the legal aspects of this party process are where the state petitioning and the legal aspects of this process are where the state party is at its most powerful. The local boards of elections are greatly staffed by party allies. The party has money and to pay for lawyers to challenge your petitions, try to get you thrown off the ballot. Before February, you really will want to raise money to pay for the retainer of a lawyer who can oversee the legal binding and filing of your petitions, protect your candidacy if it is challenged. You need to pay for the printing of your petitions. And then on a separate track, you need to build an organizing operation that can collect those signatures. And the requirement typically, at least this is at least in Kings, I believe it's everywhere, is 500 signatures. You really should aim for double that to be sure you have a buffer. Now, once you're on the ballot,
it's not 500 signatures. That's the minimum. There's a minimum. It's a complicated formula. I know for myself, it's only 238. So it depends on the assembly district and a complicated formula who voted in the last governor's election.
Yes, that is correct. And there are especially seats with fewer registered Democrats that have lower requirements, but you're still Michael, significant numbers. Thank you for the correction.
This is Dan Cohen. I'm the state committeeman for the 6th 9th AD. I don't want to interrupt your your flow, but I also want to give a slightly different perspective. Not that you've said anything wrong. I just want to add a little color to it. When would be an appropriate time to do that?
Well, Dan, you're scheduled to speak.
Go ahead. Oh,
Okay.
Go for it, Dan, if you feel like it's.
No, I don't want to jump ahead of Gene and Mark. I'll wait my turn.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, can we take
Yep,
questions?
this is pretty much it. What I would just want to emphasize is that once you are on the ballot, if you can succeed those first couple of hurdles, you have made it past a big chunk of what the local parties and state parties capacity is. Once you're in the primary, I think you can go out there and win that race. But getting through those first hurdles is really, really important. All right. Thank you so much for listening. This was fun.
Thank you, Michael. It was really informative. Does anyone have the queue here? I think Gene is first.
Yeah, in the first part of your presentation, you mentioned the Board of Elections as being patronage jobs. Could you, are there other patronage jobs that most of us would be unaware of that people obtain through the county committee?
The biggest set, in my understanding, are between the Board of Elections and then in the courts. Likewise, because judges need typically the support of county committees in order to be nominated, and then typically the county committees and the county parties provide the bulk of the organizing effort. Though those judges then need to be donors and insiders as much as they can with the county parties, and then they reciprocate by providing many jobs in the courts to various people connected to the county party. So the boards of elections and the judicial and the courts are the two main locations where this sort of old school patronage happens.
Okay, Mark.
Now we have, Mark.
Yeah, can you, I don't know if this is going to be done later on in the presentation, but I'm asking now anyhow. Can you contrast running for state committee versus running for district leader in your county? What's the contrast? What's the contrast between powers and the ability to influence?
Good question.
Yeah. So one thing to note here is that this differs by county. In Kings County, where I am, they're the same seat. You actually run for state committee, and that automatically makes you a district leader. In other counties, I know in Queens and New York County, that's different.
Yeah.
In Queens,
and so the part. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just can answer it for Mark for Queens. In Queens, there are two separate positions. In both cases, we need to get to the point where we have enough people to be able to actually change the top part of the structure. And so district leader in Queens actually is the one who elects the executive, the chair of the party in the county. And that person is the person who picks like the officers and actually gets the chance to run things if they so choose. What we have a situation of is, they like to keep things the way they are. So for us, district leader and state committee are two separate positions, but they both have our need for change.
Right. Dan?
And in Manhattan, it's also separate, like NEMA mentioned it.
That's right.
Dan, thank you. I'm pleased to see some of my state committee, reform state committee colleagues on this call. I see Emily and Jay and some others. Michelle, happy birthday, Michelle. I think I want to just put a slightly different perspective on Michael's presentation, and he didn't say anything wrong. I don't want to. It's not a correction. It's just the process of running for state committee. Someone actually asked Michael earlier on, like they were thinking about whether or not they should do it. Absolutely do it. Whoever that person was, I'm sorry I didn't take down their name. I'll write you a check. Run for state committee. Please run for state committee, because most people aren't challenged. I'm really pleased. I'm in Manhattan. I'm in New York County on the Upper West Side, but I'm really impressed with what I've seen in New Kings and the Queens Reform leadership of running for lots of things, because most of the time the positions are not challenged. They're not defended. The people who have them been holding for years. They don't, it's not even necessarily people who are particularly political activists. They're like, oh yeah, I'll do this. And then they just, year after year, no one challenges them. So they stay in office 10, 20 years. So please, whoever that person was, and I'm sorry I didn't write down their name, please run. Whoever you are, run. And if you
We're
tell
gonna
me
be
who you are,
talking
you put your
about-
name in the
we're
chat,
gonna
I'll
be-
write you a check.
That's
So
the whole
Believe it
point.
was me, and even if it wasn't
Kim
me, I
Cooley?
will take your money.
fantastic. I'm happy to write you. I'm happy to support you. Go for it. I also want to say that the process isn't quite as, it doesn't always have to be quite as brutal as Michael described it. I think there are some areas where you really do have to do all of the things that Michael described. You have to get a lawyer, you have to get money, all of those things. In other cases, it's honestly just run. Just put your hat in the ring and get some friends together. It's not quite, come on kids, let's put on a show, but it's not as onerous or terrifying as Michael described. Although I think Michael is a realist and a pragmatist, I also don't want Michael's realistic and pragmatic point of view to discourage you, Kim, and anybody else who's on this call who's interested in running. Please run.
I want to just sort of echo what Dan said, and I wanted to sort of make people think, but I agree. And I think a really important point that he's making is that most of the people in these positions don't have very much experience actually running for office. If you can challenge them, you are suddenly in a position that you know, this isn't like a lot of people holding higher level offices have a lot of experience running for office. And there are fundamentals of elections and how well did this can do, how well this can do. At the state committee level, like you might just, you have a shot if you can get on the ballot in a really different kind of way. It's really exciting.
I ran for state committee about 12 years ago, against an incumbent who'd been there for 40 years and had just really never been credibly challenged. And I was able to get the support of a bunch of reform political clubs in the neighborhood. And then I beat him. It was not easy. I did have to raise money for it, but it wasn't impossible. And in fact, I think that it's for more often than not, that what's the comment? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take kind of thing. Like, you lose all 100% of the elections where nobody runs. So Kim, I hope you run, and other people on this call, I hope you run, because honestly, it's just the fact that people don't run are the reason why people stay in office perpetually.
So we'll take
and I
two
also wanted to comment a
questions.
little bit, two other comments briefly. Michael didn't touch on, which maybe perhaps deep in the weeds a little bit more, but it's a weighted vote on the state committee. And what that means is the vote depends on the previous gubernatorial election turnout. So the 69th Assembly District on the west side has amongst the highest turnout in New York State. So my vote, along with my colleague Lynn Thomas, who's my state committee woman colleague in the 69th, actually has is 1% of the total state committee. There are 400 members of the state committee, but our vote is heavier weighted because so many people vote in the 69th Assembly District. Other folks from other parts of the state who have fractional percentages are much, much smaller. I don't know if that's fair or unfair. I mean, I have more of a vote because of the number of people who turn out in my district. On the other hand, it does seem to sort of heavily weight people who have greater population. Whether it's fair or
Dan,
unfair, that's what it is.
let us take two more questions.
And then I'll stop there. Yeah, sorry. Thank you,
And
George.
then we'll
Kim, put
get
your
on
email in the
there's
chat.
going to be a big question and answer period after the presentations. I want to
I
get to
want to say one thing before we move on to the next question. I do appreciate what Dan is saying. Dan and me are coalition buddies. We ran for city council in the same district. And I have to say, if you do want to run, you should run. I think the system in itself makes everything seem like it's so hard, but it's not.
Right.
So this is why we're doing this. So we all share and spread information so everyone knows how to get on the ballot, knows that there are resources that you can reach out to. But for the next question, there was Naima. And then Brianna, if you still have a question, we can go to you after.
Naima?
Okay, awesome. Hi. Yes, I actually just wanted to follow in the footsteps of Dan. Thank you, Maria. And thank you for the presentation. My name is Naima Silver-Matos. I'm actually the state committee woman for Assembly District 72, which is Washington Heights, Inwood, and Marble Hill. And so I just wanted to share, I guess, my perspective, and hopefully that's helpful for other people. Something that Michael said that I really appreciate, because in this district where I'm at, it's exactly how he described it. So it is cutthroat up here. It's like that, if the minimum is 500 signatures, you want to get 1,000 signatures, because what happens here in my district is that the opposition is going to go through each one of your signatures to try to eliminate, to try to disqualify signatures. So if you only get the 500, let's say, that the state election law requires, then your competition, they're going to try to invalidate as many of those signatures so that you don't qualify to get on the ballot. So that's why whatever the number is, the minimum amount of signatures you need to collect on your petition, try to double that, triple that. Just know the territory, the terrain that you're in. If it's a highly politically active district like Uptown, Washington Heights, then you do want to go hard, basically. But like Dan said, right? Like Daniel said, you do have folks that just have the seat because no one else runs against them, or they have certain backings. So for full disclosure, I was part of a political club, a very powerful political club up here. And I decided to cut ties with them and, you know, establish my own course. And earlier this year, I ran for district leader. So I'm currently the state committee member, but I ran for district leader. So this is one of the areas where it's two separate positions. Right. And I ran against an incumbent that has been there for like 20 years and literally doesn't do anything to advance any type of democratic values within the party. So that's that. And something I can say is, look, the state committee, at least for myself, the position itself doesn't require too much of your time. You know, like there are quarterlies, there's like different meetings that you have to attend. And in my time here, there hasn't been, you know, those fun moments or those big moments where you have to come together as a committee and select leadership for the Democratic Party, which that happens sometimes. I have not been part of that yet. But what I can say is that as a Democratic State Committee member, I have been able to leverage that position to get like resources for the community. What I mean by that is like I've gotten a vaccine van. I'm getting free COVID testing. I'm getting food to distribute in my community. And that's kind of like some people, they look at the title and they're like, okay, we like that. Let's collaborate. And for me, I don't care about the title. I care about what can we bring to the community. So I've been able to kind of leverage for that, to do that. And since I'm here, I'll just announce that I am going to be running for the New York State Assembly, because it's going to be an open position in my district in Washington Heights. I'm doing it independently, grassroots. And I'm actually like,
so Naima, let's just move on a little.
Yeah. No, the last thing
very important points.
The last thing I wanted to say, George, is that I also don't believe in like one person having all the positions. So there are like younger Democrats in my district that are interested in getting more involved. And I'm like training younger Democrats that may want to run for state committee and replace me. So I'm working on that as well.
Very important. So we have to move on, but one of the things we're going to do is what Dan was saying about the proportional weighted vote. We're going to add up the votes of all the state committee people who are on this call. And we'll announce that after. And I bet you there's a big chunk that's a big number that we have. So now we're going to get into the people who actually ran and won. And they have survived this process, and they have a lot of wisdom that we could learn as we seek to get more seats. So the first person is my state committee rep, the 52nd, who has the most votes, weighted votes of any district in the state, Jesse Pierce.
Thank you so much, George. Could everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much, George and Maria, and thank you everyone who's here tonight. This is a very excellent crowd, and I'm really excited to talk about this topic with everybody. I'm also gonna go ahead and share my screen here. Just 1 second. Yep, there. Can you guys see my?
Yep.
Do you guys see my my doc?
We got it.
Okay, great. So I wanted to kind of focus on a few things, and I also just want to be mindful of time because I know that there are some other great state committee members on the horn, and also want to hear about their experiences. So I ran in June 2020. And I'm a first-time elected state committee member. George mentioned I'm in the 52nd Assembly District, which is Brooklyn Heights, Park Slope, Gowanus, that part, Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, that part of Brooklyn. And I think there are just like a few key things in terms of what was important to me, both when I ran and then also before I ran, but also during the execution. And so the first part is really obvious, but it's also asking yourself, why do you want to run? And I'm not going to read through all of the text, but I'm also happy to make this available to folks once I'm done. But essentially that you need to be really grounded in your choice, because it is difficult. You are running a race for all the reasons that Michael laid out. Even though it is an unpaid position, it's very much a real position, and you're going for within a big geographical area and for a lot of votes. As George mentioned, there's a lot of Democrats in my district. There are 75 to 80,000 active Democrats. I, of course, did not reach all of them. But it's important to be very secure in your choice. And I think also to make sure that you have really strong community support in both volunteers, but also the people that you decide to join your team and help you run the race. I was successful because of the active and engaged volunteer base that I had. And of course, my core team were the real keys to my success. So Michael's from New Kings Democrats. I'm also from New Kings Democrats. That's really where I cut my teeth when it came to reforming the Brooklyn Democratic Party. And it's through my relationship with George and others that I also started to appreciate the value of being the state committee member. Well, initially my focus decision for running was around reforming the Brooklyn Democratic Party. So the core campaign roles that I had are laid out here. And I think the main thing that I'll call out is that my campaign manager was my first big choice. And the person I chose was someone I had a really strong relationship with. We had very aligned goals on what we wanted out of the campaign and why we were doing it. But she was also someone that I trusted to really manage everybody and to make executive decisions when I couldn't be there. And I can't emphasize that enough, is whoever you choose to be running your campaign, you as the candidate have to be front and center, and you're in such extroverted spaces all the time, and needing to meet people and needing to have a very approachable disposition as you're retaining a lot of information and meeting folks. And so your campaign manager really needs to be your general behind the scenes. And so I just really wanted to emphasize that was one of the key decisions I made. And I was really lucky that my friend Sarah Schoner was just such a great person for this role. And so I wanted to make sure that I emphasize that. We also did a lot of organizational work when it came to the campaign on the front end of the campaign. And I think it was a big key to our success. So we had some pretty basic deliverables like an org chart and a staffing sheet defining roles and responsibilities. Again, these things seem very basic, but I think that it's really key to getting everything together, but also moving fast, because there's so many things that are happening when you're running a campaign. And the main thing I want to point out is down here we had some guiding principles. These are just the ones that I listed out that were our focus, but we did check back on these, especially when there were critical decisions that needed to be made, or anything kind of got out of whack, because you will hit road bumps as part of your campaign. And so these were guiding principles that were, again, very intentional, and were things that we revisited and checked any decision making that we did. As far as my field operations strategy, I would say that my campaign was a year-long campaign. I don't think that that's going to be a good fit for everybody, but my point in kind of laying out this outline was just to give everybody an idea of essentially over a 12-month period, we had pretty key milestones that we focused on. And I think the main goal was that while I was running to be state committee member, my election was an open election, so I wasn't running against an incumbent, but there hadn't been an election in the district in 10 years. So I was really, in addition to introducing myself, I was also introducing the role. And the goal of the campaign was to embody the role before I had it. So basically to act like the state committee member or the district leader, and then to kind of drive the field operations strategy accordingly. So the first 3 months were focused on canvassing. That was just to get people to vote early. And the second 3 months, we did some letter writing, for example. That was after the November general election. So it was focused on introducing me specifically. The next 3 months were fundraising and petitioning, which I would agree with what everyone said, that it's always good to get at least triple probably the signatures. You just always want to be safe rather than sorry. And then while I had the unique situation of running for office in the pandemic towards the election, we focused on phone banking, but also a pretty crucial absentee ballot strategy of making sure people were requesting their absentee ballots, that they hopefully were voting for me, and then submitting them. I also make a call out about endorsements here. I think there are different variations of endorsement. I personally think that if you don't have that many endorsements, it's not a deal breaker. They can be helpful for the reasons I stated down there. They can give you some credibility if you're a first-time candidate. They can provide you money and volunteers from organizations, and they can also demonstrate some momentum for your campaign. And then down here, I just kind of detailed what the specifics of my fundraising was, some of the systems and tools that we used to execute throughout the campaign. And then down at the bottom, just some miscellaneous, I think, crucial tips that I learned that I found really valuable. The first is that I had a political director role, which I think was unique to my campaign. And while I think it's a nice to have if someone's going to be dedicated to that role, but it really helped me focus on relationships with electeds, clubs, organizations. And so just having that person kind of helping me send emails or setting up meetings, that was really crucial, and I think a big part of the success. A really strong website and social media presence. So I was always taking pictures, posting on Twitter, posting on Instagram. And really at the end, because we were in the pandemic, so many people were Googling my website. And I think that was a big draw for myself as a candidate. And I think to speak to what Dan and Michael have mentioned, that people who are in these positions aren't used to running campaigns, and they don't usually have even a website or any kind of real online presence. And so if you're able to set that up, it's a big distinguisher for yourself running for office. And then the last part is that we just tried to have, as cheesy as it sounds, a lot of fun. Not that many people run for office. It's a pretty extraordinary thing to do. And so anyway, most people were really excited to talk to me about it, to learn about the position. And so I just want to emphasize that I think it's a really fun thing to do. And so if it's Kim or anybody else, I'm with Dan. If you're thinking about running, I think you should throw your hat in the ring and do it. And that is all that I have.
That was fantastic. So again, we'll after the rest of the candidates go, we'll have time for questions, comments, and the like, but we'd like to get through each of the speakers. I'd ask them to try and keep their presentations for 5 minutes so we have enough time for that. The next speaker is
Jesse,
Dan.
it's up on top of your screen.
Okay, there it is, stop share, thank you.
Next speaker, I'll let Maria introduce her buddy.
Yeah, so next speaker, we're going all the way to Manhattan. We have Dan Cohen, who is a state committee member in 8069. That is the Upper West Side. Dan, take it away.
I don't have nearly as professional and polished a presentation as Jesse does, and I also I feel like that was whenever Jesse is going to run for next, I don't know, mayor or something. I'm down with that. That was superb. I guess I gave away some of my comments before when I was reacting somewhat to Michael's presentation. I ran, there was an incumbent who had been there for many decades, and I was able to pull together enough support to challenge him and successfully beat him. The thing I'll say is actually there are, at least in Manhattan, there are a lot of political clubs, and I'm also familiar with that too, is that many of them are reform clubs. Reform sometimes is in the eye of the beholder, but many of them are pretty lefty. And there were a number of clubs, 3 clubs in 69th, that were trying to get rid of the incumbent, who had been a real difficult and challenging person to work with, personally and professionally. But no one had really sort of stepped forward and was willing to do it. And actually, it was a bit of the sort of subverting of my ego, because when the seat was coming up again, a number of people expressed interest in running, and I basically said, I won't run if somebody else runs as well. It has to be a one-on-one race, or we won't. We'll split the vote, and the incumbent will win. And I was like, if someone else wants to do it, I will endorse them. You know, let's. And one by one, people who had expressed interest dropped out until it was just me and him, and then I was able to sort of coalesce all of the support to beat him. I really applaud Jesse's very thoughtful and comprehensive plan for running for state committee. I guess, as I sort of commented with Michael, I don't want people to be flippant about it, but I also don't want folks to be intimidated too much by it. I think there is a lot of virtue of running just to run, just to throw your hat in the ring for it. I maybe not perhaps recklessly or without thinking it through, but in a way that enables you to sort of explore what it's like to run without necessarily having all of the pieces in place. I'd love a political director for my city council campaign that Maria and I both ran against. I didn't have that. I feel like I should have a whole conversation with Jesse offline. That's really, I think, where it starts. And then I'd say that Manhattan, at least, the county committee, while flawed, without question, perhaps maybe in slightly better shape than some of the other counties. And that's not to throw shade. I just think that, there's some counties are, in far worse shape in terms of their political conditions. Or maybe Manhattan is not as organized at the topmost level to really like snuff out or crush all of the reform tendencies that happen to emerge in Manhattan. Well, perhaps I know the folks in Brooklyn are really struggling against, hopefully with success in the near future, against their county organization. Maybe I'll stop there. I also shout out to Nobles, who's was instrumental in helping draft a proposal that challenged the Jay Jacobs, who's the state party chair, really sort of moving the dialogue from just sort of internally into really objecting to his performance. In fact, I yield the rest of my time, and thank you all.
Yay, Nobles.
Yay, Nobles.
Thanks, guys. Great team effort.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. Now we go to Queens, where my favorite VG Ramos Rios, who I followed for several years, a Bernie delegate, Bernie organizer, and ran AOC's campaign. She's been around. Let's hear from VG.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Maria. And this is great hearing everybody talk about this. I'm probably going to take it from a opposite thing, in that in Queens, when Dan was mentioning, tops that have managed to keep county committee as non-functioning and practically non-existent, Queens has done an amazing job at making that happen. And so there were a group of us, and I just need to make it really clear that my running came out of being part of a slate. There were a group of us that got together, New Reformers. Some of us, myself, had just learned that any of these positions existed at all in 2016. Like, I'd never seen one on a ballot. I never had one even get raised. I'd never even been offered the opportunity to sign a petition. So and I know that there's other people in my district who have seen the petitions, where at the top you have a laundry list of people, and where, state committee can be not state committee, but county committee can be written in even. So you could be signing a petition, and unless you ask them to unfurl the whole laundry list, you may not even know who's totally at the top. So to encourage people on the front of running, I filed with the state that I was going to run. I never opened a bank account. I never spent more than $1,000 on this. And the only way that was possible, guys, was that I ran with a slate. And there were other people who were on this slate. The focus of the year that I ran was actually on district leader, because in Queens, we have 72. So we thought, oh, maybe there's a greater chance of getting a total number there to flip it. It was a first attempt. It was a throw it at the wall and see what sticks. But it was with a group of people. Like George mentioned, a number of us had met during the Bernie campaigns in 2016. Some had met on Alexandria's campaign. Others had met at the beginning of the Caban campaign. So Queens had a lot of movement going on and a lot of activist campaigns. And so our effort in terms of mine running for state committee, a number of people running for district leader, and we even had, I saw Miriam on here earlier, she ran with us as a judicial delegate that year and made it. But like part of ours was, like Jesse talked about, talking to people about what the positions even were. Most of the people, when I was talking, like picking up my nephew from school, they'd never heard of these positions. They had no idea that the Democratic Party had positions, that it was something that you could be involved in if you weren't somehow already being paid by an elected official. No clues about any of the positions existing, about what it was. But there was interest, and there were people who were just excited that we were excited to be running and trying to do something. You know, like I think that was the biggest sort of viral aspect that went on. Also, I'd like to reinforce Jesse's point. We had, under New Reformers, which was what we had, kind of across Queens, anybody who was willing to run, a very simple website. So we're not talking anything fancy. We're not even talking major policy positions, but we are talking about people just having a line up there about why they wanted to run and what it was about the Democratic Party that had them being a member. And people shared stuff via their own personal Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and they were out on the streets. The other thing is, when we've been talking about petitioning, which is like one of the best ways to get your voters, because you can get the list of people to remind to go out and vote. Hey, you were at least willing to have me on the ballot. There's actually an election. Go cast your vote. Is that when you run with a slate, that number, whatever the number is, in our case, it was originally 500 to the point about the pandemic, it got changed. You divide that by the number of people who are running. So if you can get a full slate of people who are willing to have a good time, be on at least a phone call periodically with each other. Sometimes it was as you get closer, it was more often. You can have a good time doing this and talking to people and getting to know people and meeting people in your area. There were, like I said, there were people who opened bank accounts. We definitely had George Albro, Arthur, who's a part of this group, actually volunteered his expertise for the petitions, but there's a lot of people with expertise on it. And the other thing I will tell you about this is petitions can be printed on your home computer. Mm-hmm. You just need somebody to design it. Have it designed for 8.5 by 11. It might take you a lot more paper because you might get less signatures, but sometimes it's easier when you can send somebody a PDF explaining to them that they have to have somebody besides themselves who's a Democrat in New York be their witness to sign the petition and get it back to you. During these pandemic times, people not having to necessarily knock on a door or feel scared because somebody else just used that pen, it can be helpful to have those sort of resources. So understanding that it's been made to seem like this super secret club you need to know. And like I said, when we did Alexandria's campaign, we were shooting for as close to 4 times as many signatures as possible, because the idea was we were going to get wiped off. But if you know you have the requisite number of valid signatures, so I know that there's things like Van and Blue Note, but one of the things that I did, and could be that I live close to the county board office, but we would go and check our signatures if need be, and make sure that the person actually lived in the district. A lot of times people don't know. They think they do, but that just happens to be where they shop, and they're actually 1 street out. They think they're registered as a Democrat, but they just vote Democrat every year, and they registered as an independent Dem, which isn't anything, and thus they're listed as non-affiliated. So, you know, we check the signatures. Simple things like that can mean that even if you have an amazing group of incumbents who are insistent upon keeping things the same, you do have the opportunity to change it. And to be honest, I think others would say, I don't know why you were shocked, but I was shocked to win. The night of, I was very shocked, because my effort in initially running is I wanted it to appear on the ballot. I wanted people to see that this was a position that they actually had an opportunity to contribute to. So I feel like I've talked for a long time, but I wanted to get a few of those points across, just to let you know that I admire the people who are completely organized and set about this, but not everyone is. And I also want to give a huge thank you to the Progressive Caucus, to folks like Jay and Patrick and Amelia, and there's so many more, and I know I'm missing some, but who welcomed me in because I was a complete noob and did not know how this worked. Had a hard time getting them to email me so that I could actually attend after I was elected. So, and Emily, sorry, like there's just so many people here who were so helpful and so like held my hand, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Wow, those are great points. Really, really great points. So speaking about Emily and Jay.
Before we move on, I wanted to give the floor for a couple minutes to Nobles, who's also from Manhattan.
Yay,
Nobles, take it away.
Thank you, Maria. I'll make this quick. Shout out to Julio. Shout out to Naima. Shout out to Dan, Progressive Caucus leader. Emily, I love you. Well, first of all, I just want to give the quick shout outs out real quick. I know that a lot of folks have already given you some must-haves. Run with the slate. Get a website. Must-haves. I want to give you some more. I'm a freshman state committee member. Washington Heights in Harlem is my district, 71st AD. I also came up during COVID like Jesse did. And, you know, shaking hands, kissing babies wasn't a thing that you did, you know, between, you know, January and June of last year. And so we had to come up with different ways to, you know, even outside of digital, because look, I'm a marketer by trade. I run Lysol's marketing for the last 3 years. And like, and digital is like what I do. But you can't ever discount physicality. So let me give you some must-haves here. Even if you don't know how to do Facebook backend yourself in terms of running your own ads, which is actually super easy, you can teach yourself in a day. I would highly suggest getting registered as, getting eligible to run political ads on Facebook. It's like a 2-day process in the notary public. But even if you don't use it, you're gonna need it at some point. So definitely get registered for political ads on Facebook. 2, must have, I did my own admin paperwork last year, you know, registering to run for office, you know, all the finance stuff would suck. What I'm doing this time around is I'm getting a campaign finance person just to do my finances. I do not want to get into what they call the system EPS. It's a nightmare, folks. If you're not like a CPA by trade or have that kind of inclination to do it, I don't even run my family budget. I would highly suggest getting a campaign finance manager, a treasurer, basically, and just have them run it. If you do, or if you are a part of a Democratic club, usually your leadership knows these kinds of people or is able to get you in touch with these kind of people. Another must-have is start writing down campaign tidbits. like little sound bites and stuff, not necessarily for stump speeches and things, but for ads. Like a lot of times especially, you know, with progressives, we have a lot to say and a lot of things to unpack, and we hope that the common sense wins out. It doesn't always win out. You got about 1.7 seconds is on average what a Facebook ad's attention is. And that's if you're lucky. So you want to make sure that, you know, the things in your head, healthcare as a human right, you know, protection for essential workers, you know, food safety, all those kinds of things. Make sure that you have like a pretty good like list of comms, like before you even get into it. Another must-have, I would highly recommend learning how to use Canva or Be Funky. These are two freemium models online where you can make your own creative. So you don't have to pay a graphic artist. It's super plug and play and easy. You can make your own Facebook ads, to your own pamphlets, like literally everything. I highly suggest doing that, because one of the things you'll need to understand is you don't want to pay people for things that you can teach yourself to do. You don't have to raise a lot of money for state committee, especially if you know how to do certain things that political consultants would charge you for instance, or other ancillary, you know, support folks. I was basically a one-man campaign runner last year, but again, it was COVID, so it was a bit easier. But I highly suggest like learning some of these things, except for campaign finance. Like that is just a nightmare. Another must-have, think about outside of the box ways to campaign in your area. One of the things that you're going to run against if you have an incumbent, or even if there's no incumbent, and let's say you're facing a larger machine in your area, is that they always play by the old book. I can tell you, mailers, you know, a couple door knocks here and there, maybe a things underneath the door, but that's pretty touchy these days because of COVID. They always play it by the old campaign book. You see this when Republicans come after us with all their propaganda. We have no defense sometimes because people don't know how to reinvent the messaging wheel here. And I did a lot of sidewalk chalk last year. I did a lot of just like put some of my slogans and stuff on a poster board and walk around blocks, not talking to anyone, but they would read. I'm Nobles Crawford running for state committee. I'd like walk around like a town crier with the sign up. And a lot of that time, it's going to be educational questions that people ask you. What is state committee? Like Biggie was talking about before. Most people don't even know. So if you're walking around an assembly district, which honestly isn't that big, or you know, at a local hub, you know, in your area, like where the grocery store is, and you just have a sign, I'm running for state committee, people will come to you. You're not going to get that often from a lot of establishment folks. So try to reinvent the wheel when it comes to messaging. Sweetie, I'm talking. I got like 1 more minute left. Okay. Sorry, I got a 6 and a 3-year-old that are knocking down my door. But also one more must-have is also like make sure that you know you kind of are part of a political club. There's many different ones usually, and if there isn't one, I would say definitely start one, even if it's just a few people. You will need that support on a sustainable basis over a period of time. So not just, you know, possible supporters in your area, but like legit people that believe in your ideology that you can all, you know, progress your local agenda with, even if it's 2-3 people. Just get started somewhere or plug into something. And that's really it for my must-haves. Everyone else has basically covered everything.
Thank you, Nobles. So it may seem like we're just New York City, but this is a whole statewide state committee. And we do have really good folks in various parts of the state who've been doing this for a while. And one of them is Emily Adams, who has a lot of experience on the state.
It is so different from what you guys do downstate. It's just like so different. I mean, can't fundraise. You know, I raised no money from my campaign. This was 2018, so 2 years after Bernie. But I thought, you know, I'm going to try it at that point. And I'm also from the county where Ithaca, New York is. So we're that little blue bubble in the upstate red part. And so I kind of knew that the people around me, the Democrats, were strong. They knew how to vote. They really wanted Bernie to win. The county went like 67% Bernie in the primary. So I figured all I'd have to do is ride Bernie's coattails, and I've got this thing, right? Except it was a contested race. There was a woman who was already in the seat, who was the secretary of our county committee and a very nice person. And I didn't want to like tarnish anybody or get in any kind of food fights. And I also wanted to get the support of the committee. And the committee didn't know me because I wasn't on the county committee until very late. I didn't even know what it was. I just did the direct plug into Bernie online and go and get him on the ballot and everything. So for a while, the Bernie mobilized group in Tompkins County was a little at odds with the county committee. We were not exactly best friends. So I wanted to not have any trouble there. So I first called the woman who had the seat, the incumbent, and I said, you're the secretary, and you go to these meetings, I hear they're horrible. And she's like, oh yeah, they're horrible. And it's a long drive. You got to go to Albany and New York City and stuff. And yeah, it's a terrible long drive. I said, well, do you really still want to do it? I'm kind of interested. I'm new. I've got friends in New York City. So it's kind of interesting to me. I could do it if you don't want to still do it. Kind of hopeful. No, she still wanted to do it.
I get involved with helping others.
So I said, well, then let me think about that. But, I think just for the good experience and to be a role model in the young Bernie-esque community, I should run too, and we should have a very civil primary. And I think that was kind of shocking to the people in the committee. They never had a primary for that seat or for many other ones either. But I sort of took that naive enthusiasm and played it to the fullest extent that I could. And I just went around town because Zephyr was running. I was Zephyr's sort of point person in Tompkins County, also for Cynthia, also for Jumani. And so at every event that I tried to organize for them, I just put my little hand-printed flyer on the table next to the literature for the other ones. And when I introduced the candidate, I'd say, hey, here's this wonderful person here to visit us, and there's their platform. And by the way, when you go to vote, underneath their names on the ballot, mine will be at the bottom. Give me a vote too, if you don't mind. And I never said one bad thing about the woman who was the incumbent. In fact, I like her and I said good things about her. And I kind of figured that since she didn't do Facebook and she didn't do, anything else really, but she was a very good lawyer. But I figured I kind of had an advantage, and I did. I won with like 70% of the vote.
Wow.
And I spent, $50 total on ink in my cartridges for printing up some flyers. And,
30,000, 50.
yeah, but I don't have much of a weighted vote. So there's the minus side up here, but I can still stick a thorn in Jay's bonnet. Yeah. So
amazing story. So our last speaker is probably been on the state committee the longest. It probably knows the most about how it runs and its foibles. Jay Belanca, 113th AD. Jay, you're on mute, Jay.
I thought I clicked it. I guess I didn't. I think Dan and I probably are pretty well tied for being on length of the service. I was appointed in 2012 when the redistricting happened and our county went from having 2 members to 6 members.
I beat you by 2 years, Jay.
Okay. All right. But we've done a lot, and I'm probably going to sound like the most establishment person here. I was appointed. We petitioned. There's never any competition up here because there's 62,000 people in Washington County, and very few of us are Democrats. So that's kind of where we go. But I know there were a lot of questions on actually, a little history of my perception of what the state committee's done in my tenure. And there were some questions. What does it actually do? Well, probably the most important thing that happens is the convention to nominate, and which is coming up in 2022, to nominate candidates for governor, lieutenant governor, AG, all the statewide races, controller. And someone just needs to get 25% of the delegate vote to be placed on the ballot without having to go through the trouble and expense of petitioning. So that is probably the most important thing we do. And also, we're supposed to be the conscience of the party and make policy and things like that, which we don't do very well because it's controlled by a cabal of establishment people. And one thing a lot of people haven't mentioned is, and we've reformed this into my county committee with a lot of my insistence, is the existence of proxies. What happens is a lot of the state committee members are asked, oh, you're my buddy, you know, you've been doing this, you want to be on the state committee, with no intention of ever really serving, but serving the purpose of having their proxy harvested. It's especially bad in Queens with the Michael Reich and that whole group there. And Dan, you've been at committee meetings with me when they would say, there'd be 40 people hold their hand up and 2 people hold their hand up and there you have it. And they'd say, oh, because I know what proxies that they're carrying and they had the weighted vote. So it's the most thing we have to do is make the Democratic committee more democratic. And one way to do that is to get people elected so we can get that weighted vote to actually have reform. You know, and most of it's been behind the scenes acting and who you know and what you know. One of the other things that happens is the delegates to the Democratic National Committee are, I think it's 11. There's 11 will you vote on.
It's 11.
The same people have been there 100 years. Mario Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo's sister is on the Democratic National Committee. Last time around, they put the same group in that's been in there forever with one change. And our friend Byron Brown is on the Democratic National Committee. So that's something we could change if we get the votes. So that's where we have influence. And that's why it's somewhat important to do this. Somebody cut me off at 5 minutes.
Okay, I don't want to cut you off. I just want to add in your comment and said part of it is not so much that we need to have the numbers necessarily to make change and to vote change, but if we just embarrass the state party, sometimes they do the right thing just because they're kind of like ashamed that we've shined a light on it. The Progressive Caucus is maybe 15-20% of the total state party, but we punch above our weight sometimes because people pay attention. It's a little trickier in Zoom when we were all in the before times in person. We could make noise.
And somewhat the state chair is basically serves at the pleasure of the governor. And we've seen that, Andrew Cuomo appointed a whole series. He had Keith Wright and Stephanie Minor and continuing putting his buddies in. The last one was Byron Brown, who, and then we got Jay Jacobs for the second round. And one thing we have done as the reformers is at least taken away the power of saying, oh, they have it, where if we call for a division, which means the votes have to be actually counted and estimated by the weighted vote, that we now have electronic voting in the state committee, which has been a huge reform. And that's something we've done. So, we'll see what happens in the future, but we need more help. The latest thing, we do have differences of opinion on things. We needed to, Jay Jacobs needs to go, but I want to have a thing happen where we actually get rid of him. We did have a vote and he did need to be called out on things, but we need help to do that. So I'll yield whatever time I have left back and answer any questions anybody has. So
George, can I say something?
Sure.
There's some hands up and then I'll call on you, Arthur. Let me take
Okay.
Gina. Thank you, Jay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Gina and then Kim and then Arthur.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to share also in an upstate county, Rockland, when I found out about this state position, nobody else in my whole town committee knew about it. And the person who was on there was getting their assembly person to put their name on their petition.
Right.
So my assemblywoman had chosen 2 people for these two seats, the male and the female, and was putting them right on her petition. So then I went to her and tried to ask if she would, include me. And she gave her reasons why she didn't. But if you're friendly with your assembly member, that's a place to start. Go right to them and ask them, would you endorse me? I'd like to run, and would you consider having me on your petition? That's the simplest way to get your signatures.
Good point. Kim?
So I live in Nassau, Jay Jacobs's county, and I highly doubt my assembly member would do that for me. But yeah, this is a scary concept. I just, when Jay and Dan were talking about, even if you don't have the numbers, you're able to impact change on the state committee. I just wanted to give credit to the state committee members on the call for doing a lot of cool things in recent years, like truncating the time to party affiliate. I know a lot of Bernie voters that were shut out, in 2016 because they were no party affiliation or independent. So that was an issue that had a light shined on it, and some anti-Semitic mailer against Cynthia Nixon, and there were like a few other things. So I just wanted to give a virtual round of applause to the state committee members on the call for doing the things and for being here with us and wanting to make it more transparent.
Thank you, Kim. Arthur?
So I wanted to just say two things. First of all, it's amazing to see all these faces, just amazing. I was on the state committee from 2006 to 2013, and then I got re-elected district leader. And in my part of Manhattan, you're not supposed to serve on both positions. So I left the state committee. But I know that, like Dan said something about Dan Cohn, who I saw in here. There are, seeing all these faces, I think will give, and if we run people in other parts of the city, in Queens and in Brooklyn and in Manhattan and in the Bronx, if the state committee can be forced to allocate votes by the weighted vote, and those of us who live in New York City, or those of you who live in New York City, who participate in the state committee, can feel safe, can feel like you're not going to get isolated. A lot of change can be effectuated, because most of the time what happens is counties like Jay's, which has six state committee members, and has about so they have a very large percentage of the county committee, and they probably have 1/50th of that in terms of the actual population of Democrats in the state. But very often votes are just taken by hand, right?
Yep. Correct. Yep.
By just 200 against, 104, the against wins. And even though if the 100 had actually more accumulated votes, it never counts, and nobody yells about it. So that's very important. I also wanted to just say, I know you're talking about petitioning. I worked with I do election law on the side, and it's very plausible. We will, back in 2020, it feels like a million years ago. It's just a year ago. I worked with the Queens New Reformers, and we somehow coordinated about 35 different candidates running for state committee and district leader. One running for assembly, he won, Khalid Anderson. And we will work with people again to do that, in this group. It's not rocket science, but it's very easy to make mistakes. And then if you can be put we will work with people to make sure you have the proper petition, and that you know how to fill it out, and if the work you have to do is just go around and get the signatures, we'll make it as easy as possible for people to do that. And hopefully, one of the things we did in 2018, where we were doing the no IDC, the anti-IDC campaigns. So in those districts, we got people to run with Cynthia Nixon, Jamani Williams, Zephyr Teachout on the same petition. So the Nixon Jamani forces with circulating petitions that we were able to put them together with, instead of your local assembly person, it was with your local progressive Democrat running to shake things up. So by coordinating together, we can make life a lot easier in that vein. It takes a lot of coordination, but it's doable. The people running for statewide office, Attorney General, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, need to run everywhere. They need to get signatures in 17 counties or 20 counties. They have to get 250 signatures. So they have to campaign statewide, so that it's likely they'll be getting signatures in the area where you're running. And so that coordination is going to be a very important thing that NYPAN will help people with, and I'll help people with as an election lawyer.
Great, thank you. Arthur's a tremendous resource that we have going forward. Maria, you want to recognize people?
I want to recognize Jeremy Berman, who is the new president of the Manhattan Young Democrats, and they do have an initiative to run people for state committee and county committee, judicial delegate, all that good stuff. So Jeremy, if you want to say anything.
Yeah, sure. We're doing a lot of the same things that the new Manhattan chapter of NYPAN is doing, but basically we're interested in helping anyone out who's thinking of running, young people, because with Manhattan Young Democrats. So if you're progressive but 36 or older, you have our support, but not our official support, only our unofficial.
And Cohen doesn't qualify.
Yeah, exactly. So so feel free to reach out. I'll put my email in the chat if anyone's thinking of running for any of this, specifically in Manhattan, and I would love to talk about that and see what we can do to help you out potentially.
So Jeremy raises a good point, and the whole point of this is that not to have people run strictly as individuals for one seat, and then even if you win, be isolated, okay? Because you're all doing this for really good political reasons for change, and the only way that's going to happen is if we run as a team, and we help each other get elected, and then when we're elected, we stay together, right, as a group, and we go into these meetings not as individuals, raising, but as planned, with a program and a platform. We don't need a numerical majority, even of the weighted vote. We need a critical mass, and if you have that critical mass, you go into the state committee and you control what happens. And we can do that. I mean, just the people on this call alone has enormous power if we just, do it collectively. I see Jay's hand.
Yeah, I wanted to make 2 points. One is, and I know Jesse and VG and Dan, we speak. I've been trying to be as welcoming as I can to anybody who gets on the state committee and give them, a little bit of the knowledge I have and try and get us coalesce. So anybody who does want to run or wants anything, we're here to do that. And I'm a co-chair in NYPAN and can help out with that. And second thing, everybody talks about petitioning. One thing that's very important is to get out there early, because you're going to be competing for Democratic signatures. And the first one counts. So you can get other people's signatures, that they're going to do that to you, that they're going to look at the dates and see, it's a big operation to do that. But that's very important, like to be out there the first day, and then you've got the signature, somebody else can't get it. So anybody who wants to ask anything can contact me through NYPAN and I'll be glad to help.
Great point. Other questions, comments?
So I want to add one thing on the point about being a slate. There's a lot of conversation on the chat about county committee. So I just want to clarify that county committee is a small elected position where you represent your election district. Your election district could be a block, 2 blocks, not that big a state committee or district leader. So technically everyone on this call can run for county committee. And on the idea of running as a slate, get out there, meet your neighbors and run for county committee. I know New Kings Democrats has an amazing program around getting people to run for county committee. So, you can refer to their website. There's other resources around. Ask people here who are state committee members as well. I am a county committee member. It wasn't that hard. You just knock on doors, meet your neighbors. It doesn't cost so much money. You don't need so much of an infrastructure, but it's a nice way to build at the hyper local level. So if you are a little bit scared about state committee right now, take a shot with county committee. And in Manhattan, you have an interesting opportunity because we have county committee elections in 2022 and then again for 2023. So try it out, run for county committee or run for state committee, but just know that if you are running for state committee or district leader, you could absolutely just go for a county committee too and meet your neighbors. It's a good way to start a tenant association, a block association, because you're ultimately meeting your neighbors and it's not so high stakes. So who's next?
Good. Let me just say that before people leave the call, we've been on for a while. What we propose to do is have, at least in the city, have meetings countywide, and to have those meetings with people who are presently in the state committee and people who are interested in running for positions who are not on, and to as Maria was saying, to run as a slate or a team and to cooperate with each other. I know that Brooklyn, Michael, you want to announce the Brooklyn meetings coming up? New Kings Dems are coordinating a lot of the Brooklyn races, doing a great job, and they have 2 events coming up.
Yeah, so we have two events coming up. We are hoping to support district leaders across the borough. There are 21, so district leader state committee in Brooklyn, same thing. So, there are 42 seats in Brooklyn. We are having 2 info sessions coming up. The first is on Sunday, the 12th. It's going to be in person at the First Unitarian Church at 119 Pierpont Street at 3:30 p.m. I'll put this all in the chat. You don't need to write it down. And the second one is then going to be Monday evening, and that one will be a Zoom meeting for people who would prefer to meet virtually at 7 p.m. on Monday the 13th. I would also, if anyone is interested in running, wants to hear more about, wants to talk about this, I would love to talk to you. You could contact me at data@newkingsdemocrats.com, or you can contact our political affairs director, Jessica Thurston, at politics@newkingsdemocrats.com. And I will put all of this in the chat. Thank you all so much.
And you could also contact me or Sam. Sam, you want to put your contact information in the chat? Sam is a staffer for NYPAN and Our Revolution.
I think Sam had to hop off, but
Sam. Okay.
Yeah, but if you're in this call, then we have your information. We'll reach out to you.
Okay. Manhattan, what are your plans?
Okay, so for Manhattan, we're planning an in-person meeting for early January. We don't have a set date, but it will be in early January in person. And we want to get as many people together that want to run for these positions, state committee, county committee, judicial delegate together. And, let's talk about it together. Let's talk about how we're going to support each other and talk about how we're going to petition, because petition is going to be around the corner at that point. So more details to come. But if you register for this meeting through Mobilize, we have your contact information and email will go out about that.
Right. And don't wait till January. If you're interested in running for a seat, let people know. So we can like pencil you in, and we don't want to have two progressives running against each other, right? That's important. So we want to know if you're serious about running, and so we can get behind you. Queens, I'm not sure there's any plans in Queens. I don't know, VG had to step off, but we'll send out to this whole group, whatever plans there are for Queens. But again, if you're interested in running, let people know, and we will get supporters to you. And I think that's it for tonight. Anyone have any other closing comments? I hope people found this interesting and informative, and it spurred you to action. And after next June's primary, we may be the state committee. And I can tell you one thing, Jay Jacobs is going. That's our first order of business. So
for Manhattan, whom should we follow up with? Maria?
Maria.
Thank you.
I'll DM you my number.
Thank you.
And there's tons of people in King's here. I mean, it's amazing. King's has a really good, solid core of people.
Mary has her hand up.
Who's that, Mary?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
I had the question in the chat, but during the pandemic, the number of petition signatures was reduced.
Right.
How can I do that long term? Because 500 signatures for a state committee position that nobody knows about, I think is ridiculous.
Well, it'll be less in your area, Mary, I think.
Oh, I know, but it's even 70 signatures where I live. That's miles and miles of driving to getting signatures.
Let me step in on this. There's been a lot of questions on the number needed for the petitions. It varies. It's a maximum of 500 or figured out by a formula by the amount of people who voted last election for the governor in your portion of the assembly district. Like I said, for my district, I need 256 or 58. It changes, it'll change. So it's 500, it's the maximum, it can be less. And in these upstate counties, you're only going to be talking about a couple of 100 signatures minimum. So, and lots of times, if you have no competition, you can get 10 signatures and you're in. That's it. You're not on the ballot if nobody runs against you, and you go out and get 10 signatures. And a lot of these county chairs count on that, so they can appoint their buddies to be on the state committee, so they can then harvest the proxies. That's the way it works. So keep that
So
in
you don't
mind.
have to have the full amount if you're unopposed.
Well, if somebody could challenge, say you only get 100 and you need 280, somebody could challenge that, but then they have that 3-day, you have the 3-day window for the preliminary, then the 7-day to do. It's difficult to challenge. I've done it, but it's difficult to do, and there's a real procedure to do that. But if you get the signatures, you'll catch them unaware, and that might even happen in some of the city districts. I don't know, it's completely different upstate and downstate. But as people have been saying, a lot of the votes are raise your hand. And it doesn't matter whether you have 1,000 weighted votes or 50,000 weighted votes. Unless somebody calls for division, that will not come into play. So if you see 50 hands up, and there's only 40 on the other side, they might not call for it. So that's where it all counts. So anybody wants to know anything, I'm glad to talk about this forever.
Gary?
Did you say how many times a year the group meets?
So I would really need help to figure out some of these details, because I think that for
Call me, Carrie, call me.
Yeah, I don't want, what I would want to do is alert the woman who is the current state committee member or the chairs of the local committees to know that I would do this. I would like my campaign to be kind of stealth.
Me too, Carrie.
What?
That's what you do in red districts. You run stealth.
Well,
campaign.
this is, it's funny. This is a loyalist Democrat district.
Yeah.
And they know that I am very much the Bernie person that's come to town. So I really have to. So Jay, you can help me figure all these details
Yeah, why don't you
out?
call Jay offline? Yeah. he'll help.
All right. I mean, and I didn't know that we had to register and have a bank account.
No, you don't need any of that.
All right.
You don't need it.
So I'll give you a call soon, Jay.
Okay, please do.
Thank you.
Well, apparently I have my first donation. So if somebody would be willing to have a call with me as well to kind of handhold me through some of the scary stuff, I
Well,
would appreciate that.
If you're gonna
Yeah.
start
Talk
taking
about
donations, you should have a committee. And if it's not that hard. And that's one of the guidances I can give people.
Thank you.
And a separate.
Okay,
bank
we're
account.
going to adjourn this. If people want to stay online and talk, you feel free to stay online. I want to thank everyone for your time and interest in this. We all share this project, and this project is to make the Democratic Party democratic again. It's a long way, but we'll do it. And you guys are a great foundation. So thank you all for being on and contributing your time. And
I'd love to hear a poll of how many people here are just considering running. Can we?
Half the people here are already on the state committee.
Well,
all right, guys. Take care.
Night, everyone.